be back because we were just talking so loud.
Herding cats to get everybody.
I know, right? Her freaking out.
Good morning. All right. I'd like to welcome you to the Wednesday, November 1st, 2023 Board of Public Education informal session. This is live streamed today. The informal session is just that. We receive information. We do not take any votes. And I will now ask our board secretary if this has been posted, and she assures me it has. So we will get on with our meeting. Our first on the agenda is under Student Success, Academic Achievement, and Life Readiness, our status report on federally identified schools. And we have Ms. Ball Oliver.
Good morning. I'm also joined by Ms. Crystal Bell. She's our senior officer for elementary K-8, and she is also our district liaison who works directly with the state team from Godot that supports our schools. Much of our presentation, actually you heard many components of it in the previous presentations from our principals. So this really is about our district plan of support actions and results of implementation, as well as the school improvement actions and results, school data, progress, and sustainability and next steps. And it revolves around the actual support and work that we do collaboratively with the Godot team that supports our CSI, TSI, and our CSI Tier 4 schools. Just as a reminder, comprehensive support and improvement schools are in the categories, the lowest 5% of Title I schools only. Those schools are the lowest performing schools that represent the bottom 5% of all schools that are eligible for identification. A second category could be high schools that have a 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate that is less than or equal to 67%. In order to exit the comprehensive support and improvement area, a school has to no longer meet the lowest 5% entrance criteria, and they have to have demonstrated improvement in content mastery in ELA, mathematics, or science from school year 2022 to 23, or if it is due to graduation rate, they have to attain a 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate that is greater than 67. As a reminder, these schools receive $150,000 in support if they're CSI. If they are Tier 4, they receive $175,000 from the state in support. Our targeted support schools, this applies to all schools, and they have at least one subgroup that is in the lowest 5% of all schools and at least 50% of the indicators that make up our CCRPI for school year 2022. They may exit that list if the subgroup is no longer performing in the lowest 5% of all schools and at least 50% of those components. CCRPI components are content mastery and readiness, progress, and closing the gaps. And as a reminder, these schools receive $75,000 in support from our state. Promise schools are those that are in that lowest 5.01 to 10%. These are Title I schools only, and this is how they are identified. The purpose of a promise school identification is to provide those schools with support so that they can sustain the improvements that they have made and avoid them falling into the CSI category. These schools receive $20,000 in support from the state. Here's the list of schools for Savannah-Chatham County Public Schools. Currently, we have our CSI schools, A.B. Williams, Brock, Duran, Mercer is our only Tier 4 schools, which means that they have been on the list with CSI status for at least 3 consecutive years. Our TSI schools with subgroups that are impacted, Largo, Tibet, Windsor Forest Elementary School, and then we have Promise Schools, Butler, Haven, Hubert, Myers, Rice Creek K-8, Sela, Schumann, and Susie King Taylor in their middle grades area. I'll now get Ms. Bell to actually share with you our state district plan of support and those very specific structures and strategies that the state implements with our schools.
Good morning. So we're very fortunate to work with the State Department, and our state team that works with our district recognizes that we already had started implementing some things to move our schools. So we do not have to create anything different. So the goals that we created are things that we're already working with in our schools. So we have 2 goals right now. Our first goal is to increase our content mastery by 5% as measured on the Georgia Milestone Assessment System. And we want to maintain 70 progress points for each of the schools, because all the schools currently are at least 70 points on the GMAS. Those action items that we're going to do to make sure that we implement that goal is monitor the implementation of collaborative planning, and we have an observation tool for our data collection, monitor the implementation of standards-based classroom, and we also have an observation tool and a debrief protocol. Our goal number 2 is for our SWD and ELL population. That's our subgroups, so it's for our TSI schools. So they're going to use the attendance, behavior, and cohort grades, the ABC tracker, to monitor the subgroups. They're going to be invited to present that data to us in our next district plan of support meeting with the State Department. They're going to monitor the implementation of small group with instructions with our subgroups, our SWD students. We're also going to provide professional learning on the world-class instructional design and assessment system, which is WIDA, on the can-do standards and strategies for teaching English language learners in the classrooms.
Ms. Ford, can I ask you a question
Yes, ma'am.
before you go further? Because when I learn information, I like to be able to integrate it with what comes afterwards. And we sat here for an hour and a half, and we heard from 3 of these schools that staffing is their main problem. Not programs, but staffing. So then we see, okay, we have the state giving us $75,000 and $20,000. What in the world can we do with that in terms of what they're telling us they need? So I don't mean to sabotage your
No, that's
presentation,
okay.
but
That's
I'm
okay,
just
that's fine.
saying, board members.
I concur, I'm just gonna wait.
Yeah, yeah. But for her to go through all that, well, we know that this is enough for one person's salary here. You know?
And very barely, because we have to include
Barely.
benefits.
Yes, we're not even talking about benefits.
Yes.
So I just want us to understand the gap between what's really needed and what the state is doing. So
Yes.
forgive me, but
No, that's okay,
I
Ms.
just
Hall. Okay. So these are some actions across all of our schools that we see in our schools. So they're implementing 45-day plans. We meet with them regularly to look at the data before they do their next quarter's plans, so that way we can ensure that whether we need to make some adjustments or we need to sustain what has been done on that. They also are creating and encouraging family engagement, as you heard them talk about that. That's very important. All the schools have a family engagement coordinator that works with their community and their parents to ensure that we can get parents involved in the school system. They also, the district is also observing and providing feedback during their leadership team meetings, the data team meetings, and collaborative planning sessions. Our collaborative planning sessions is going to be what's key, because we see that teachers don't all have the same skill sets. So doing collaborative planning, you heard one of the schools talk about doing at-bats. That's something that's done to allow other teachers to see how that teacher is going to approach that lesson in front of students before they get in front of students. So collaborative planning is really key, so they can have that conversation. We can ensure that the strategies being implemented in all the classrooms is pervasive across the school. Also, they're implementing differentiated instruction groupings. That's our dig time with Fidelity, and that's our small group where they can meet those individual student needs. And that's where they talk about needing more support with that, with staffing, so you can have an adult with those small groups. They also implement a plan to increase student discipline, decrease student discipline referrals, as well as absenteeism. Many of the schools have a weekly attendance team that meet, and they work with their parent liaison to kind of get those parents involved in getting those students into school every day. They're also ensuring that standards-based teaching and learning is happening in classrooms. This is where they make sure that teachers are teaching to the standard, to the language of the standard, that students understand what they are to learn by success criteria, and that they're making adjustments as needed when they have the data meetings. And then last, they provide feedback and coaching to their teachers. Our academic coaches are in those buildings, and they are providing that one-on-one support with those teachers in those classrooms to ensure that they're getting what they need by having regular observations, providing feedback, and then going through the coaching cycle. Okay, this data was already presented by Dr. May, so I'm going to kind of move past this data and get to some of our successes. So you heard Dr. Ford talk about the Leaders of Literacy Award. We had 8 schools in the district. 4 of those schools were identified on the state. So 8B Williams, Brock, Largo, Tibet, and Rice Creek, all were awarded that by Superintendent Richard Woods came and visited and actually gave the awards out to them personally. We also had gains in content areas on GMAS, and I'll show you that in a moment. We get support from GLRS, which provides professional learning on our subgroups. That GLRS is the Georgia Learning Resource System with Kim Bennett and her team, and they work very close in all of our schools that need that additional support with the students with disability, not just the schools that are TSI, but the other schools, so that way we can ensure that those schools do not get on the list for their subgroups. Students are actively engaged in learning and can articulate what they're learning. We were able to see this when we did observations in all 13 of our schools across the district. We had a day where we went in and did observations in the classroom and provided that feedback, and this is what came out of that. As well as intentional collaborative planning for instructional delivery was very evident from our observations at each of the schools. So here's the data to show that we had progress on our content mastery. So for ELA, we had 9 of the 14 schools made progress, and we had 1 school, Rice Creek in the elementary, had double-digit gains. And then for math, all but 1 school, so 13 out of 14 schools had gains, and we have 8 schools that made double-digit gains with the content mastery for GMAS. And then our sustainability and next step efforts are going to be to continue to refine the implementation of job and better professional development. You heard them speak about letters. That is something that's coming up for our teachers. Continue observations of leadership and data team meetings and provide that coaching and feedback, because our leadership team in our schools is what drives that instruction in the building, drives those programs and those initiatives. We're going to continue providing coaching and feedback for collaborative planning sessions, and I talked about that earlier, how important and critical that is to the instructional program. We're going to engage in professional learning on the science of reading with all K-5 teachers and administrators have already started that training. And continue the implementation of our dig time with fidelity, because it's so important to be able to meet those individual needs of students, and that dig time is a way to be able to meet that need during those small group instructions. We're going to provide professional learning focused on research-based strategies for closing those achievement gaps, and then continue to build a positive culture with the focus on teacher wellness for all of our schools. And that's the end of our presentation. So we'll entertain any questions at this time. Yes, sir.
I would like to just echo what Ms. Hall was saying earlier on the amount of funding, and pardon me for being ignorant and not knowing how little it was. So thank you for putting that on there. I always thought it was, we work really hard to try to change the needle at these schools, and we get put on lists, and then the people that put you on the list throw a mere, I was doing some quick math here, a 2% budget increase for Windsor, a 2% budget increase for Brock that spoke earlier, and what would amount to be about a 4% for Mercer. If they're getting the 150 and the 175,000, and they want that to make a massive difference. And I know that it's a smaller percentage for some of those schools, and I thank the district for this, and I will continue to support that we fund schools with equity, because some schools need more. These schools definitely need more, but it was sad to see that you get put on a list and then you barely get anything to try to make a difference. And yeah, that's paying for a person, maybe two, if. So thank you for your report. Thank you for all the hard work. I know that we've changed a lot of things on the ELA side and the math side. I hope that it is a positive change and that we stick with it long enough. It's going to take time to stick. I think the community needs to understand that it's going to take time because this is a massive pivot. But way to go for the community asking us to pivot, and we've pivoted. So let's keep with it. It's a big ship, small rudder, but once we get the ship going the right direction, it was just saddening to see that the rudder doesn't get bigger when you're labeled a CSI or a TSI. So thank you for all the hard work that is done in the classroom.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
So not to pile on the wagon, but this morning when we were having this conversation, I'd already written a note about tying all of these conversations together to Ms. Hall's point. Later on this afternoon, we will be talking about our legislative priorities. And one of our continuing legislative priorities is the disconnect between the funding that we receive and the funding that is needed today and how that funding has not been updated. And we're getting ready to have our first budget committee meeting later this month, which to me is where, as a district, I hope that we will really tie these pieces together, look at what the population of the needs are at that school, what their resources are, and almost take, because we're funded with this QBE formula, I would love to see how much we truly need, how much we get from QBE, what is that delta, and tie that directly to our budget, school by school, to really be able to illustrate, particularly to the community as a whole, why we have to make the tough decisions that we have to make when it comes to budgeting if we truly want to get to where we need to be, that we just don't get the state and federal resources to be able to move that needle effectively. So I think this is a great opportunity for us as a board and as a district to tie all those pieces together and do so in a way that is highly transparent and hopefully can also be highly effective in doing what needs to be done. So thank you again for your work and your presentation.
Thank you.
Ms. Howard Hall.
Yes, and one of the key focus is sustainability.
Yes.
We know that once a school is no longer designated as a TSI, CSI, promise they would not continue to receive those funds as well. So based on my previous experience, we've learned that one key component of sustainability is professional development, because the question is asked, how can you continue to show progress once these funds are no longer available? And we do also know that state funds, you have your Title I funding, and you also have the SIG, which is, the school improvement funding. So what are our schools doing for sustainability once they're no longer receiving these special school improvement funds based on their success? And what are they doing differently with those federal funds? Because we know that we can't supplant federal funding. We can't do that. So what are we really doing that's different with our federal funds as compared to our state-funded schools?
So the schools that receive, you want to answer? Okay. So the CSI schools, which receive a bit more, did get a person in their building, but the Promise schools, as you see, only get $20,000. So they bought some resources that they can use with the students. So as far as sustainability, I think that's why we're moving in that direction of doing the letters training. And we have been doing training with the new math standards monthly to get teachers to be able to understand and have skills and strategies to teach it. I think that's going to be a game changer for us, having that letters training, because it's not a program. It's skills and strategies, and it's teaching teachers how to teach reading and the math. It's teaching teachers how to teach math using manipulatives. So we did purchase manipulatives for the, across the schools for them to be able to have with students in those small group settings. So I think that's going to be how we're going to sustain, because we don't have the money. We have to build on what we have here already, and that's our teachers.
Also wanted to add, we had to actually wanted to add because we talked about that and having been in a situation where they give a little and then the minute you do a little, they take back everything. And so having been in that situation, we also reorganized the way that we provide support from a district level and had to look at it by tiers because some schools require greater support and we can sustain that through what we do for them because we also know that that state support will eventually move away from them. And so providing that professional development, but also having the staff at a district level that continues to be able to provide some support because as they spoke up this morning, they do have turnover and they need that additional support. So how can we support them as well through PD and then being there to help train their teachers? We had to take a look at it from that perspective as well.
Okay, Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you. I apologize for missing your report. I did need to step out for an emergency. I did review the materials, and my question is about a statement that you just made about the resources, a human body versus the $20,000. And we just heard in the equity subcommittee meeting that that body really makes a difference, particularly the practices that body, can bring forward. So I'm kind of wondering about the $20,000 that's allotted. Do you know what the thinking was of the state of what $20,000 is supposed to do? Is that based on something? Is our software packages $20,000 and it's supposed to be a magic software package, or what is their vision of what's going to be accomplished as far as it's been communicated to you?
We do not have that information.
Good answer. Exactly.
We honestly do not know what the thinking was for $20,000. We just knew at one point it used to be $0, then it went to $20,000.
Okay. Reverend Smith.
Promise schools.
Okay, I just want to spitball with it a little bit. I mean, how are we using it that we have it? Are those teacher supplements? Is that a half a position? How have we strategized?
So what we've done is that most of the schools that do receive the $20,000, of course, to Dr. Howard Hall's point, utilize their Title I funds to leverage with the staffing component because they are Title I. With the $20,000, then we look at what are some additional actual resources they may want to purchase. It could be through training and professional development. It depends on the needs, what's in their actual plan for that year based on their data, as well as their short-term action plans, or it could be additional resources that they would actually like to purchase to come into the classroom. Sometimes it could be software once it's been vetted, reviewed, and determined that it's evidence-based in terms of having an impact on student achievement. So it varies, but again, they're very limited in what they can do because the $20,000 limits them.
Right. Well, that's really helpful because we just heard from 3 principals that the professional development is extraordinarily important. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Reverend Smith.
Thank you. Thank you both for this wonderful presentation. It is good to see progress is being made, and I would like to thank you for your work and your efforts along with the district. I have 2 questions I would like to lift up. One being, when we look at sustainability, as Dr. Howard Hall brought up, teacher wellness. It says to continue to build a positive culture with a focus on teacher wellness. I wanted to know, have we identified any goals that we have to implement in this regard?
So yes, we have. Our Teacher Senate has talked about this, and we are in tune to what's going on across the nation. So working to actually look at our teachers' schedules and what we are requiring them to do. That's number one and paramount in terms of their time and how their time is being utilized, and working around that master schedule and how much time they have to devote to meetings, but also being able to do lesson planning and also being able to make those parent contacts, trying to ensure that we build that time into their day so that when they go home, they truly do experience that quality of life, that improved quality of life outside of work. They don't have to always carry it home with them. So that's one area of focus. And then I would also talk about the being able to support them from a classroom management standpoint and giving them the tools that they need to be able to truly work with their students and support their students. And so part of that is, again, what wraparound services and connections to the community do we have that we bring into the building to help with that?
Awesome, awesome. Last question.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry. You okay? You okay? I wanted to look at page 13. It talks about the school improvement progress. I see that some have made small and some have made larger scales of progress. I wanted to look at Largo Tibet, which is a 5th district school. It has made great strides, and I would like to know, have we been able to identify what is the key component so that we can implement it across the board?
So I'll also let Ms. Bell speak to this as she works directly with them, but I would be remiss if I did not say leadership is one component. If you've ever met the principal of Largo Tibet Elementary School, as well as the teachers and their commitment and what they do every day in the classroom, and I'll let her speak a bit more to what the district then did in terms of supporting them with other areas.
Can we get that scrolled back up?
Page 13.
Okay. So definitely leadership matters in a lot of our schools. As you heard from Dr. Ford this morning, and that's the great work he's done and been in there for a year. So she has done a lot in her building with first building relationships with her staff, and then sharing data. They have lots of data conversations. The support from the district is in there constantly. They sit with them on collaborative planning because, again, collaborative planning is where we can leverage where a new teacher on a grade level team can get support from those other veteran teachers on that grade level team, ensuring that the same instruction is afforded to all students across the board. And just the hard work that team, when you go into that building, they're Leader in Me school, so they focus on building leaders in the students. So they have that component there that gets the students to take ownership over their learning. So it encompasses some of those things that we've seen that has attributed to their data.
Awesome.
In that building.
Thank you tremendously.
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
I certainly hope we find a lot of ways to celebrate these schools for this growth. And, you know, we don't just say, oh, good, but that we really celebrate them because this represents a lot of hard work. I'm so encouraged. We had a board member not even here in the room, and when she came back, she was saying the same thing that we were saying without her being here. So that means that it has really impacted us, that you came in and said exactly what we had just finished saying. So that was good. And this question is really for Mr. Hediger. I know on the legislative priorities, at one point, we had trying to expand the purposes of East Plus pennies to go beyond facilities. No, but what I'm saying is, now that we know that the staffing situation is so critical, might that be something specific that we look at, you know, rather than kind of just saying more computers and that, but we literally look at personnel. Is it possible? Because I know the people who vote for East Plus would certainly vote to help us do anything we could to improve these schools that need our help so badly. So, Mr. Hediger, what do you think in terms of the language we would use for that?
Sure, you'll have an opportunity to discuss that full-throated during the regular session, but we have in years past touched on that East Plus configuration. It would take I believe there would be a constitutional amendment that would be tied to that before it could change because it is a required referendum that goes before the people. So, but to that point, we have talked about flexibility on use of that resource beyond capital spending. We all know that it cannot be utilized toward people. However, I would advise that the board may consider thinking about other ways to talk about the state-funded positions for school districts. Perhaps in another bucket, it would be more effective to approach that, because what you get into is the appropriations of the state through the state budget process, for which they will provide funding for staff. A perfect example is one of your legislative priorities in the support of student well-being on school social workers. We have about 23 social workers in the school district. Only 14 of them are actually funded by the state. So this falls exactly in that same wheelhouse. Where can you have the most bang for your dollar in supporting human capital for the delivery of educational services in the funding of supports through state monies for positions? And I believe that actually would be more effective outside of the East Bluffs approach.
Well, to me, our citizenry needs to be complimented that they support East Bluffs and have supported it from the beginning. There are many districts where the referendum fails. You know, it always amazes me, but it fails. So, however we can most directly affect the staffing situation, I think we need to begin, you know, thinking about what we might be able to do with that.
Anyone else? Okay, so thank you so much for your report. What I'm looking at the progress, and what I want people to understand is that progress included moving kids from beginning to developing and from developing to proficient. That is significant. That is, and actually moving some kids from beginning to proficient. That's huge. So compliments to all of the schools on that growth. All right. And this is for the general public. I invite you to attend all of our finance committee meetings because I want the public to know exactly how this process works and what our board goals are, how state funding affects us, how local funding affects us. So I'm going to say this again. When is our finance committee meeting? 29th. The 29th at 9 o'clock in the morning. I would like to see the general public here. And I would like for you to be here for all of our board meetings when we're discussing budget, because understanding will help all of us. I am floored. I am floored by this minuscule amount that is given to these schools. And David, don't faint. I'm going to echo what Dr. Brinkman said. You cannot ask someone to do something when you know there are challenges and not provide the funds for them. I also invite the public to attend our board meeting later this afternoon when we'll be discussing our legislative agenda, because we're going to talk about that. And it has to come not from us, not only from us. We need the general public telling our legislators what we need. So thank you so much. Anyone else? Ms. Grabowski.
Just a quick, to your point about the budget committee meeting, I agree, absolutely. We want the community to be engaged, involved, and aware of that process. Perhaps, you know, one of the things that our communication team does after each of our board meetings is they provide the board brief, which is a great way for the community to get a quick recap without having to sit through the entire meetings, because I do think we need to be cognizant that, you know, people have limited time. So I don't know if that's something that we can explore, particularly for the budget committee meetings, and it may be great for all of them, but I don't want to overstep. But because the budget is such an important part of our role as a board, perhaps that's something we could consider as a more concise way to convey that process to the community.
Great.
Motion to create the Denise Grabowski financial brief.
We can't vote in this meeting.
I want it as a podcast too.
All right. So, anyone else? Thank you very much. And I think Mr. Katchmeyer is going to join us now. Everyone, Sean Katchmeyer.
Here comes the bride. No.
Sorry. All right. Next, we will talk about fiscal responsibility and resource stewardship. And I invite to the podium our superintendent, Dr. Denise Watts.
Good morning. It's been awesome to spend the last couple of hours talking about academic achievement in our school district. I am going to pivot us now to the other side of the house, but a complementary side of the house, as we explore our long-range facilities plan. And actually, I wanted to come down from the horseshoe and present with the team because the Phase 1 plan that you have in front of you and that I'll be outlining today would not be possible without every single person sitting behind me. It has been a cross-pollination and many hours together to get this plan articulated in a way that we hope addresses some challenges, and so that we can move our district forward with having not only strong instructional programs, but the facilities and the environmental conduciveness to educate our students at a high level. So excited, and before I get started, I just want to extend a public thank you to the team for all of their hard work and effort. All of this started with operations back in September, late August, but has really grown into a cross-collaborative effort. So thank you all for your hard work and input. As you see, or as you can see, this is a Part 1, Chapter 1, immediate needs proposal that is before you, and we will be providing for you a Phase 2 in a couple of months. But the proposal that I'm going to give you an overview of today would address immediate needs in the district, and the recommendation is that these proposals go into play for the school year 24-25. So immediate implementation within the next few months. As we sat down in cross-collaborative teams, our goal and purpose was to think about this in a way that would really optimize the usage of our facilities, improve the configuration of our attendance boundaries, and again, strengthening the effectiveness of our academic programs. And as we did that, of course, we keep data at the forefront, and the facility condition assessment is a data that you all have seen in front of you many times. That was one of the main data sources that we relied on. And that data source provides a comprehensive analysis of all of our buildings, how they're utilized, what their condition and life cycle are, and it guides the decision-making and how we purpose buildings or sunset a building out of use in our district. Some of the other data points and factors that we considered as we looked at this plan proposal is student enrollment and student and staff needs. Those are all critical factors that we took under consideration. I think very early in my tenure in transition as a superintendent, I recognize that we have some real challenges. You all heard about the academic challenges that many of our schools experience. Equally, our schools experience challenges regarding facilities and utilization of buildings and capacity of our buildings. You can see here from this list that we were really grappling and have been grappling with our school capacity levels. We have schools in this district that are stretched. Every seat in every corner of the building is occupied, and we also have schools that are underutilized, where there's a lot of open space in these buildings. We have facility conditions, some optimal, and of course we applaud and celebrate those students and staff that get to attend new facilities, but we are also keeping in mind and keeping at the forefront that the age, condition, and operational systems of a building impact how students learn, and in many cases of our schools, they are not operating on in optimal conditions, and that does impact culture, and it does impact student learning in many ways. You have heard about the topic of transportation many times. We have students in this district that sit on a bus for hours, pass two schools to get to a school, and as a result of that, often get to school late, don't have the benefit of having breakfast in the morning, and if you've ever been late for anything, it takes you a while to adjust and jump in and get ready to participate at full capacity. So the extended time on a bus is a challenge that we continue to have, and one that we wanted to account for as we looked at this plan. I don't think anyone in Savannah-Chatham County could overlook how population is shifting and growing and decreasing in some areas of our city, and that also poses challenges as we look at new residential developments, as we look at the increase in Western Chatham County of houses going up in every corner of that particular geographic area. We have got to account for that as we look at our facilities. And then we have an ESOL resource facility. You all heard a lot about Windsor Forest Elementary Schools and the many languages in which they serve. That is one of several schools in our district that has the challenge of serving our students well in an ESOL program. So that is a challenge we continue to grapple with, and we have tried to address that in the plan that you're going to see in front of you today. We considered other factors. What's the financial impact? Do we have legal mandates that have to guide our decision making? You've already heard me talk about transportation routes and improvements needed there, population shifts. Again, many of these things you've heard me talk about. There are two things I want to highlight specifically. One hot topic item is our new GMG K-12, one of the first facility of its kind, definitely in this district, but I would even argue nationally. We have had to take into consideration the impact and timing of what that when that building will open, and what is the best utilization of that building. And the last thing I want to highlight from this page, and actually we probably need to bold it on this particular page, is that as we have thought about this plan, we have not neglected to consider the humanity of it. When you have to make changes in student school assignments, it impacts people. It has an emotional factor to it. And in many cases, if not done very carefully, it could have a negative impact. And we by no means want to have that happen in our schools. And so we have strongly considered all of the impacts that this could have on a student, family, and staff level. And the other thing that I want to add, as I know we have employees watching this particular broadcast, there will be we're not calling for a RIF or any staff reductions as it relates to any of these changes. We don't anticipate not needing a teacher. As you all heard earlier, talent, human capacity is one of our most prized assets and needs in this district. So again, here are other considerations. As you can see, we had a lot on our plate, a lot of filters to consider as we thought about how to move forward around our facility improvements. We are excited, though, because the plan that we're going to present to you today, while not perfect by any means, because I don't know that there is a perfect plan, will provide some solutions for us. Reducing capacity of many of our overstretched and overutilized buildings, right-sizing enrollment levels, improving safety, logical attendance zone configurations, improved transportation, some swing site spaces, and I can't underscore the importance of having designated swing site spaces, because anytime we go in and do a major renovation to a building, it impacts how we do school on a daily basis, and it slows down the renovation, and it's disruptive to teaching and learning. So when we can remove students from a campus, put them on a temporary site while we manage the renovation, it supports the efficiency of the renovation, and it allows teaching and learning to continue. And our plan also provides for enhanced instructional services, particularly as it relates to our ESOL population and some of our most vulnerable special ed students that are currently served in a GNETS program. Again, while not perfect, we do see some benefits realized in this proposal that I'm getting ready to go through. Approximately $3.5 million in cost savings. Again, reduced travel time on buses, more instructional time. I actually heard an account from Monday of classrooms waiting to start instruction at the beginning of the day because the majority of students had not yet arrived at school for a class to start. And when that happens, our students are losing time that they could be learning, and we want to definitely take care of that situation. Giving our students access to free breakfast, increasing our school communities, and giving our parents ways where the proximity of the school actually encourages them to be more involved. And again, you've heard us speak to that already today too. More inclusive schools and school capacity improvements are all benefits that you will see as we highlight the recommendations. I would be remiss if I also did not acknowledge the many other stakeholders that have been at the table, who have been apprised of our plan, who have had the opportunity to give input, and the cross collaboration that's happened from the school to many of our municipalities, to including Bloomingdale, Garden City, the city of Savannah, Pooler. I have initiated my transition into the district with Together We Can. I think this is a true demonstration. This particular slide is a true demonstration of how all of these entities have been considered and given opportunities for feedback as we look at this proposal. The plan that you're going to see is focused on some R's. I know Board Member Howard Hall likes to use acronyms, so I stole a page from your playbook, Howard Hall. The facilities plan represents recommendations for 4 R's: renovations of schools when needed, replacement of schools when needed, repurposing buildings as needed, and reconfigurations of boundary lines when needed. Again, I want to stress and highlight that green bullet at the bottom. Everything that we are proposing in phase 1 of this plan would have an immediate implementation for the 24-25 school year. So let's dig a little bit into the actual plan and recommendations and proposals of projects. The first one that I want to highlight is a movement of students from Coastal Georgia Comprehensive Academy. The principal was here. He is still here. This school currently serves our most vulnerable population of special education students. There was a state legal requirement that moves or mandates a district to move students from this more restrictive environment back to an environment that they would be engaging with their with students that are non-disabled. So to make that happen, our recommendation is to move the students that are currently at Coastal Georgia Comprehensive Academy to the Isle of Hope K-8 school. There is room at Isle of Hope K-8 school. It is a modern, updated facility. We will be working with our operations team to upgrade that facility even more to ensure that it can accommodate our GNET students and staff. We would literally be picking that school up and moving it, and it would almost serve as a school within a school at Isle of Hope. So it would be 2 different facilities operating under one roof. Isle of Hope is currently under capacity. It has the ability to accommodate approximately 200 students, which is more than capable of serving our GNET students. This particular proposal has an added benefit in that as we transition out of the current Coastal Georgia Comprehensive Academy facility it vacates that building and allows it to be repurposed to fulfill the legal mandate to provide Simcoe a facility, the Montessori charter school in our district, a facility for them to go into. That conversation is still being had. We have not finally endorsed that actual transition, but Simcoe has been to the facility. They've had an opportunity to meet, see the facility, and I do believe there is some interest in the facility. So this particular proposal solves for two different things that we have in our district right now. I'll move you to the next proposal, which is for Gould Elementary School. As you know, Gould is a school that is not only over capacity, but also is in need of serious renovation. Our study of that building basically concludes that it would be difficult to build a new school on that site, as it is a landlocked facility. There's not a lot of room to grow out. And adding to that building to accommodate the over 900 students that it has would be very difficult. And the building is not in good shape. It's not where we would want students to learn and grow and thrive. So as a recommendation for that particular school, we would be looking to move those students out to schools that are in close proximity to those students' homes. Those particular schools from Gould Elementary School would be then identified to move, again, to the school that's closest to their home. Those schools could include Haven, could include Butler, might include New Hampstead K-8. And as you can see from the colored dots on the slide to your right, it would be approximately 337 students that would be going to Butler. We would have to empty out Butler some, though, because Butler is a school that is teetering on capacity challenges. So we would have 128 students from Butler to go to Hodge, which is underutilized right now. 92 students from Gould Elementary would go to Haven Elementary, and about 394 students from Gould would be attending New Hampstead K-8 school. At this particular juncture, while the building is not in the shape we need it to be in to house our students and teachers, we do believe the building can be repurposed to be our technology center. It brings all of our technology pieces and parts under one roof, which would include student records and all of the other student information centers under one roof, data and accountability as well, which would give that division more opportunity to cross-collaborate. Right now, they are spread all over the district. And so getting all of that under one roof, we believe, fosters collaboration and enhances operational efficiency. Let's now move to the new GMG K-12. I know we are all patiently awaiting its opening. It has been a delayed opening. I spent Monday with the districts that are directly impacted by that wait. I want to apologize that building did not open in a timely manner and acknowledge the fact that it has created frustration for all of us. And we are doing all that we can to ensure that building is opened in August of the upcoming school year. Since that building is opening, we need to establish a boundary for that building. So what you see in this proposal is that the boundary for GMG K-12 would be made up of, as you heard on a previous slide, some Gould Elementary students. If those parents wish, as promised, they were given the opportunity to go to the new site. If parents still wish to have that opportunity, we will allow families to opt in using an administrative placement, and there is room to accommodate those students. That administrative placement would come with the need for the parent to provide transportation. The natural boundary for that school includes students from Garden City Elementary, Rice Creek K-8, Mercer Middle, and New Hampstead High School, as well as Groves. As you will see on this particular slide, it is a very large facility with the capacity to accommodate about 2,400 students. We would be looking to take the capacity to about 1,700 students, leaving some room for the predictable growth that we know that we're going to have in Western Chatham County. As you can see from the statistics underneath that particular bullet, there will be students coming from that natural boundary of Rice Creek and Garden City Elementary, approximately 200 students. Middle school students, we would try to empty out Rice Creek, which is over capacity right now, eliminating about 40 or moving 42 students to bring that over capacity down, and then about 248 students from New Hampstead K-8, which is one of our most oversubscribed schools in the district right now. We're having a lot of concern with the number of students. It is having an impact on teacher retention. If you talk to the principal, she's got teachers on carts at New Hampstead High School. She has had teachers resign due to the number of students, and it does impact student culture and staff culture. So we are looking to see how we might provide some relief. So as you can see from this proposal, it would provide some relief with 248 students from New Hampstead going to the new Groves, the new GMG site, K-12 site. Western Chatham County, how many times have you heard me say that today? We have a shifting and increasing population in that area of our county that we have to address. And quite frankly, it needs to be addressed with a school, a new school. We do not have the facilities we need in that area of town to accommodate the growth and the future growth. So with this particular plan to begin to alleviate some of that, we are looking at some school realignment in that particular area. It's going to impact students from Rice Creek K-8, Godley Station K-8, New Hampstead K-8, the new GMG facility, as well as West Chatham Middle School. It is our recommendation that we proceed with some reassignments to ease the capacity in this area, geographic area of our county. So as you can see, Rice Creek K-8 would have some more students leaving, 76 going to Godley Station. Godley Station is situated to be able to effectively accommodate more students because we have a new wing space being built in, so it would have the expansion needed for about 1,800 students. Also, 115 students that are currently at Rice Creek would attend the new GMG K-12 facility. New Hampstead K-8, another oversubscribed building, 513 students would help fill up the new Godley Station renovation and expansion. So those students would be moving to Godley Station. And West Chatham Middle School would have approximately 132 students going to New Hampstead K-8. So you can see there are lots of shifts here. The other thing that this shift allows for is students and families being closer to their actual home school. So this is another situation where it increases the efficiency of our transportation, and it will include ways to increase instructional time and have our families in closer proximity to the school in which they live. Just a few more to highlight. You've already heard me talk about New Hampstead K-8. If you spend 30 seconds with that principal, as I did a couple of weeks ago, to hear her talk about the challenges she is experiencing at that building, one of the first things she said to me as we proposed one iteration of this plan is this is not aggressive enough. You are not helping me by just taking a skim off the top. Her direct feedback made us as a team go back to the table and say, what can we do? Because when this is beginning to impact culture and student learning, we want to do all that we can to support her. So in this particular plan, it would alleviate overcrowding at New Hampstead High by moving 166 students closer to the school in which they live, which would be Beach High School, and about 248 students would also go to help populate the new GMG K-12 site, specifically the Groves area. Again, this provides some relief to New Hampstead High. We do not even know the number of students that we cannot account for because the homes are being built there so quickly. We know what we have now, but we don't know what's coming. And so if we don't provide some relief there, we're going to have some real safety concerns, and we're going to continue to have issues with staff and student culture. In our recommendations, we also are going to be entertaining with your vote and endorsement some school closures. One of those closures would be Largo Tibet Elementary School. We know from our study and looking at our facility conditions assessment that Largo Tibet was simply built in the wrong place. It is in a flood zone. And that school building has experienced lots of different issues with literally water running into the building, sandbags having to be put in the building and behind the building, just so we can have school. And I've heard accounts of the principal being in the back of the building with sandbags instead of being an instructional leader to keep the water from running into her school. And that is unacceptable, and our operations teams wants to make sure we create a more conducive facility for those particular students and that staff. So with this plan, Largo Tibet would close as a school as we know it today. Students in that particular school would be moved to Pulaski K-8 and Windsor Forest Elementary School. Pulaski K-8 is a school, once we finish the renovation and expansion there, we are looking at expanding it to a K-8. It would accommodate approximately 1,050 students. When we begin to move some of the Largo Tibet students into that building, it would take the capacity up to about 936. So you can see we're still well within that capacity number. About 293 students from Largo Tibet would go to Pulaski. Also, about 151 students who are currently at Southwest Middle School would be joining the students and staff at Pulaski, because those particular students live in closer proximity to Pulaski. Windsor Forest would also be impacted by this move. It would bring their total capacity up to about 544 students, with 154 students from Largo Tibet going to that particular school. It is important to note on this slide that Largo Tibet becomes a swing site for the district, and you heard me earlier speak about the importance of being able to provide swing space when we're doing a major renovation of a school, because it makes that renovation more efficient and it is less disruption on student learning. The first school that we anticipate that would be occupying Largo Tibet as a swing site would be Bartlett Middle School. Bartlett Middle School will be getting an upgrade in its facilities. Getting those students off the campus to do those efficiently would be helpful, and then we would bring those students back to an upgraded facility at Bartlett STEM. Then the last recommendation in our plan includes Formy, which, as you know, serves as a pre-K early childhood site for the district, Schumann Elementary, and A.B. Williams, and it is a 2-year step process. So in year 1, we would have students from Formy, our current early childhood center, vacating the current facility at Formy, and we would move that early childhood program into Schumann, which has space to accommodate, while we renovate and upgrade Formy Elementary School. So that's only a 1-year deal. They're only there temporarily while those renovations are taking place. Once the renovations conclude at the end of next school year, there are a couple of steps that would happen. Schumann would then be vacated and closed as a school at that particular time. All of Schumann's kindergarten, pre-kindergarten through 2nd grade students would go back to Formy, joining the early childhood program at Formy, expanding Formy's early childhood opportunities and bringing that building up to capacity. There is room to do that. And I was so glad today you got to hear from Principal Foy at A.B. Williams, because the current students at Schumann, 3rd grade through 5th grade, would be joining him at A.B. Williams. better utilizing that space and also exposing those students to those great instructional opportunities that are happening at A.B. Williams. So in this particular proposal, you see that we will be repurposing expanding Formy's early childhood program. We would be rezoning students from Schumann to Formy and to A.B. Williams, and Schumann then becomes a closed facility that we can use for other purposes in our district, to include swing space as needed. You can see the numbers of how this changes the enrollment in each of those schools. In our particular plan, I have not spoken a lot about our ESOL population. Please note that that is not by design. I wanted to save this for one particular slide because this is going to be an area of focus for our district. We want to make sure that we provide optimal, high-quality instruction and educational opportunities, and we meet the needs of our ESOL families in the district. I believe that our hubs have served a purpose in our district. It's provided all of those services in a few schools concentrated across the district. However, it also isolates a very fragile community of students from the actual community in which they live. So this proposal would disable the current hub sites and return all of our ESOL students to the schools in which they live, the community schools in which they live. And let me underscore and emphasize, the support that they currently get at the hub would go with them. We're not just sending them back to their home schools without support. In fact, when you hear my report on the 100-day plan, I really want to focus on how we enhance and make more robust the services those students get. But I would like for those students to be able to get those services at the school down the street from where they live versus driving on a bus or being on a bus for several miles to get to a hub site. So you can see here in the presentation that hub sites at Rice Creek, Windsor Forest, West Chatham, and May Howard would be returning to the home schools. The only thing that I would highlight here is that we would hold off on moving the May Howard elementary students back to the home school for one more particular year, because that situation would require 2 movements for those ESOL students, and we definitely don't want to do that. So you can see here all of the changes as it relates to our homeschool services. Now, you just had an opportunity to hear me go through a very aggressive and ambitious Part 1 plan. And we know that communication is going to be key. This is a lot for anybody to internalize. I've probably done this presentation 15 times at this point, and I'm still, every time I pick it up, I'm learning and picking up on different nuances, and we continue to revise the plan. But now is the time that we've got to make our plan more public. We've got to begin to communicate it out to our stakeholders so that they have a readiness to move into new locations and they understand the impact of the plan. So as you can see, again, the planning for this started in September, October. The planning for this also included input from you in small group board meetings. It has also included principals. We've met with them twice for impact, both on October 19 and October 26. Their input and internalizing this plan has been tremendous, so thank you to all the principals. But now we're ready to pivot publicly. Today is our first opportunity for public acquisition of this information, but we will continue with outreach and information. A dedicated website will launch today, very shortly, if it has not already. We'll have a social media presence that will have targeted messages for our parents so that they can understand the impacts of this plan. And then we also encourage our families to reach out to the principals who also have information that they can share to help provide clarity as needed. We will be doing more in-depth parent engagement opportunities November and December, giving our parents an opportunity to sit and understand what the impacts are, get very specific information about where they live and what that means in terms of any changes. and most importantly, to be able to meet a new principal if this plan is impacting them. And beyond December, we will continue with open houses and welcome events to ensure that our families transition well. As you can see here, it is important to note that we have a legal requirement as a governance structure that we provide 2 public hearings to our families and to the community to give input on this plan, and we are currently working to schedule those 2 public meetings. This is happening today in informal. This is just another opportunity for you guys to ask questions and to internalize the plan. We will not bring this to you for a formal vote until December. So there is time for continued improvement and iteration to this plan. Finally, next steps, we will continue to assess our facilities. We will continue to adjust and assess our transportation routes. We will continue to look at the financial impact, bail schedules, also tweak and refine our communication plan, and reinforce communication throughout second semester. So I appreciate everyone listening patiently as I have dived deep into a plan. I will open up now for questions. I will likely have to invite team members up to the podium if your question exceeds my expertise.
Okay, so I know that most of the board will have questions, so we're going to go around the horseshoe. We'll start with Ms. Howard Hall.
There's so much that can be said, but I do know that we will be having a parent meeting on Saturday at Beach, because we definitely want to keep our parents informed and our community. It's a lot of changes, and we know that we are really anticipating on starting school with our GMG school K-12 facility. And we had a meeting on a town hall on Monday, and there were a lot of emotions involved. And it's never an easy time whenever there's time to rezone. And you did mention about a new school. We know that we've already into year 1 of SPLOS 4, so that's 5 years. So what do we anticipate as it regards to building another high school on the west side of the county? Will that be used a bond, or is there any talk? I know that we have been exploring land to find out where to actually build another school, because it's continuously growing. I live in the Port Wentworth area of 21, and there's houses that are continuously being built out there, as well as apartments.
Yes, ma'am.
So also, I would like to add that transportation, we know that a lot of parents were anticipating on enrolling their students in the K-12, the GMG K-12 facility, and we're going to allow them an administrative placement. Is there any way possible for those that really want to go and they don't have transportation? Can something be worked out for those parents that were really looking forward to that opportunity and may not have transportation?
Yes, thank you for highlighting the Saturday meeting at Beach High School. That is in service and a way for us to begin outreach with the Gould families. Obviously, this is a very sensitive topic for them, and a lot of emotion, because that is a really tight-knit family, staff and students, and we recognize that. And so the first opportunity we can to be with them, we wanted to make that happen. That will happen Saturday, Beach High School, 11 o'clock a.m. I'm just restating it just in case someone wants to know. But as a part of that, Board Member Howard Hall, we want to survey parents to find out what the interest is, because as you stated, we did initially communicate that group of students would move to the GMG. At the same time, my understanding, I was not here at the time, is that when it was communicated, there were parents who were not excited about that. There were some parents who did not want to go for many reasons. Exposure on a K-12 site and further away from their community. So right now, for me, it's very difficult to assess where we are in that. So we will be launching a survey so that I can better understand parent need, and then we will go from there.
Mr. Johnson.
I know a lot of work has been done on this, and there's been a lot of conversations, whether in small groups with principals, staff, academic affairs, operations, basically anybody who ever said anything about public schools in Chatham County has touched this one way or another. And I understand the logic behind everything. I understand the methodology of it. The number one question that we're going to get is my house impacted? So do we know when street level maps are going to be released to the public, with the caveat that this is the most current version of it? Because that's what we're going to be asked about. Am I going to be affected by this?
Yep.
And when am I going to know? Because if they're not going to be affected overall, they don't need to go Saturday.
Absolutely. Well, they wouldn't, the Gould families would go Saturday.
okay.
But in, for example, New Hampstead High School, there will be a meeting within the next 30 days. I don't know when it is exactly, but before winter break. And yes, we do know street level data. We do know exactly, based on the street that you live on, whether you would go to GMG or to Beach or remain at New Hampstead High School. Those maps will not be on the website immediately, but our principals will have that data, and when we have the parent meeting within the next 30 to 45 days, parents would be able to know exactly how this impacts them, or whether it impacts them at all.
Because I also know that with how real estate works, people move based on where they are. And I know some people who might be under contract in certain areas thinking one thing, and they're not going to get the information.
Well, they'll get it within the next 30 to 45 days.
But they might be closed by then.
We do have that data available. We
Okay.
just didn't share it today. We wanted to do it in a more intimate school level, one-on-one format. That
Okay.
makes sense.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Dr. Bringman?
First, some comments and then a question. I applaud all the work. I can't even fathom how you make a plan like this and move all the pieces around, 3D chess. I thank you for the transparency as a child whose district lines changed almost every single year when I was in K-5. I was Gould one year, Butler the next, Gould, Butler. I'm like, wait a second, I'm driving by my school from last year to get to my new school. So I was that child on the bus for forever, and that was Highway 17 before we had to bypass from Georgetown. So I was on the bus for a while, which I would have had to change my study habits and my homework habits if I didn't have that hour on the bus. But I don't ever remember, and maybe my parents were just too busy. I don't ever remember the conversation of going to a community meeting, my parents hearing about it, something came in the mail, and that's where I was going to school. And I was a Gator one year, and I was a Bear the next, and I just went back and forth. So I applaud you on the transparency. I doubt my parents would have made a big fuss. It was like, well, that's where you're going. But I love that we're getting away from the long bus rides. It never made sense to me that I lived in Georgetown, and when we left, I hung a left to go to Beach High when the hanging a right was 5 minutes to Windsor. Granted, it made me who I am, so there was a plan there, a greater plan, but it was an hour on Highway 17 when it was 2 lanes. So it didn't make sense, just financially, like at all. But on the child level, you're like, okay, but I got all my calculus homework done on the way there, so it worked out. So thank you for meeting with parents, and I understand completely where Michael's coming from.
I do too.
There's going to be people that are going to be upset. There's going to be people that are going to be happy. It'll be a bunch of growing pains, and 2 years from now, people won't even remember that we had all these conversations. So thank you for all the work that goes into it. My question would be on the Montgomery site. We've got something in the consent agenda
Yes,
where we're
sir.
going to be putting forward some money. What schools are we thinking are getting swung into that swing site? I know it's been our swing site. You know, it has been the pitch hitter. What's getting swung in there?
So as you know, Mercer Middle School lives there now. Had an opportunity to visit a couple of weeks ago. The facility, nobody would want their child in that facility. So kudos to Mercer for being patient for another year while their new facility is being built. With the item on the agenda, the plan is when Mercer swings out, We would renovate that building and use it as swing space. The potential maybe for a Jacob B. Smith swinging there has been discussed, but it would become another swing space for us as a district. And we know that Jacob B. Smith is waiting for renovation. So that's the first school that's kind of top of mind for us right now.
And it's got like a 5.5 million price tag. And I know we've got cost savings in here of like 1.9 roughly per year. Do we see that cost that might be associated with that as a budget neutral? Is that a coming out of East Los? Where are we seeing that 5.5 coming from?
I'll probably invite either Larry or Vanessa up to talk about that specifically, but we also have a healthy fund balance that we could particularly take from. East Splosh is an option, but I don't know the specific funding source.
And I'm sorry for waiting until today to ask all them questions about money. That's good. I like that. I like that.
Morning. You're
10
correct. It
yards
is
there.
going to be funded out of East Splash as a part of that particular project. And the intent is it for that building to become ongoing swing site, because it is challenging and very difficult when we are working on an occupied campus. Even as something like an HVAC system where we find ourselves having to manage that over 2 school years. There's an additional cost because we have that contractor under contract for a longer time, and it is very disruptive. So the intent is to bring the facility up, again, using East Splash allocated dollars for availability based on needs.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
I would like to say thank you for doing the research, and thank you for coming up with a clear plan to make sure that our students are accommodated successfully and effectively. I know that it is impossible to please everyone, but I am grateful that we have done the research, we've done the homework, and we've made an educated and precise plan that will be effective in their continued success. My question or my comment will be, I did not know, and I'm sure many of us did not know, what was going on at Largo, Tibet, as far as that building issue. And when I look at and when I think about the success of students and the safety of employees, just imagining them going into that space with that circumstance is very mind-blowing, and it's unacceptable. So I'm excited about the change that's getting ready to take place, and I support it 110%.
Thank you.
I'm going to speak last, Mr. Katchmar.
I will echo what my colleague said. This was a heck of a lot of work and collaboration, and I appreciate the effort to date. And that can't be understated. I know this was a lot of work. I agree communications is important. I think we've been through 3 kind of substantive rezonings, and we've gotten better about being proactive and answering questions. And just when you think we've communicated enough, do it some more. Because somebody works nights, somebody works days, somebody works weekends. I never want anybody to say I didn't know.
Me neither.
So being proactive is very important. I'm going to repeat a little bit of what I repeated in kind of our smaller group meetings. I appreciate that this is phase 1. So I want to see the whole picture before I make decisions. So this is kind of a trust us. And I'm willing to trust us. I have to rely on the professionals who do this every day and are in the weeds on these issues to collaborate and give us the best recommendation possible. And that's what I see in front of us. I don't agree with all of it. I don't agree with the timing of all of it, but I'm going to trust that the collective thought process is much better than my knee-jerk reaction. And I'm also going to kind of defer a little bit to the board members whose districts are primarily impacted here. They're more directly in touch with their constituents, although I'm sure we will all hear feedback on this. but I'm going to trust the process and trust the professionals that brought us here. A few comments on kind of where we go. Since I've been on the board, and particularly in the last 3 years, we keep talking about wanting to spend more money on academics. The presentation this morning was about, there was expressions of, I guess, disappointment that we're not investing more in our more struggling schools. For the last 5 or 6 years, I've complained about the incrementalism in our more challenging schools. We're not investing enough. Well, part of the reason we're stretched thin is we have 60-plus facilities in this district, some of which are under capacity, many of which are 50-plus years old. I've asked for years for a lot more money for the maintenance and operations budget. 1 year it was added in and then was promptly stripped out the next. So what happens is we get our facilities condition index, which says all of these issues are here because we've been kicking the can down the road. So and then I'm looking at this phase 1. None of the schools are being closed, and I'm not advocating that any of them should be closed. But Coastal Georgia, maybe Semco's going there. Gould will be our technology site. Largo, Tibet, Schumann, and Pulaski, Old Montgomery will be swing sites. And today we're being asked to put $300,000 for design on a $5.5 to $5.6 million renovation on a swing site. So we'll have 3 swing sites. So I'm hoping phase 2 will have here's how we're going to reduce our square footage. Here's how we're going to increase capacity in existing facilities so that we're not spending X dollars times Y square foot on utilities, on maintenance, on all of the costs that go with maintaining multiple facilities. And if you all come back in phase 2 and say, we did a deep dive and we can't close anything, okay. But we're not at the point where we've done that deep dive yet. And the only way we're really going to be able to move money around our budget is if we close and sell entire facilities. Shifting facilities around to academic use versus administrative use, we still pay maintenance costs, we still pay utilities, we still pay landscaping, we still pay water, electric, et cetera. So I'm not seeing any of that repurposing for cost savings and efficiency in phase 1. I'm seeing repurposing for cost savings and efficiency at the people level. And to be clear, that should be our primary driver in my mind. It's the people. It's not the bottom line dollar on our property, et cetera. But I think that can be part of the conversation, and I'm anxious to see that in phase 2. Finally, we've been talking for years about growth in Western Chatham County, the need for maybe another high school and another K-8 plus out there. Part of our delay in planning is we're tied by 5-year ESPLOS cycles. So going back to our legislative agenda, one of the things I've asked that we advocate for many years is flexibility in changing the 5-year plan approved by voters if there's a significant reason to do so. And one of the reasons is, hey, mid-cycle, Hyundai's coming here, and we're expecting 15,000 more families. We need some flexibility. So that's one reason to advocate for a change. But we really need to get on planning yesterday for adding onto existing space out in Western Chatham County. That said, thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Ms. Hall.
Yes, thank you so much. As a political scientist, I'm always interested in how change affects people. And I'm saying to myself, once the board comes to consensus on this and we're straight, what would be the likelihood of this smoothly working and passing into being without a lot of chaos? And what I think about is we talk a lot about parents. We haven't talked much about faculty. And I think if we were able to do this in such a way that we had the well-wishing from the faculty side and that energy went out into the public, it would make a huge difference in how smoothly this could run. So I'm hoping we'll start thinking of things like, I'm at this school, but I would be a volunteer to go to that school, that we put some choice in it for our faculty so that we have that positive energy as opposed to, Dr. Hoskins Brown, you're going to this place, and I don't care that it's further from your house than you live now and all of that. If we could work through that in the teacher senate and get that adult, because adults are the kids are never the main problem. It's the adults. If we can get the adults on board, especially our faculty, and let them feel that they have some choice in how this all pans out, I think that'll really help us. Once you get past this board, that'll really help us move this forward. And I really thank you for all of this work. It's a long time coming, and it's good to see it's going to happen. Thank you.
Dr. Hoskins Brown.
Thank you. I want to continue to acknowledge the data analysis that this required, and I really extend that to transportation and to facilities because, you can come in 100 days courageous, but if you don't have some validated data that you can trust, you can't do anything. So I really want to applaud the staff in having the data available that empowers good decision making, because we have to use these data to handle our operations. So it makes me confident in the process because I'm confident in the data and I'm comfortable with courageousness. I have a couple of things. One simple thing is I'd like it if we could add the military and faith community to the stakeholders that we talk to more frequently. Because I think you do talk to them, but because they're noticeably absent on the slide, I'm just going to keep saying that so that we remember and so that they also know that we're aware and thinking about them. So these changes affect families because we're moving students. And it also affects staff because we're making significant changes in the facilities. With the young people, I agree with Mrs. Hall, with the exception of some small cases where we may have some social organizations in neighborhoods that may need some support to get along. Wasn't that diplomatic?
That was very diplomatic.
So, with the exception of that, the young people are very resilient. I hope that we will not make the mistake that we have made in the past, and that is underestimate the importance of community meetings versus parent meetings, because when we talk to just the parents who are in the buildings that we're changing, the expectant stakeholders, the community members that are coming up, that are going to be impacted, but maybe didn't get that call out from the school.
Good point.
That are upset when they encounter the change that they weren't fully aware of. So I hope that we're finding ways to make the people who don't think they ought to be listening right now listen, so that we can get their point of view. The other thing is that, and when Mr. Katchmar was talking about how we reuse facilities, I agree with you. I won't name them, but there are some facilities that I would not be opposed to removing from our asset list. I think we kind of use what we used to do on ships. I don't know, anybody's ever been on ships, you have clean, brand new sponges, and it's a brand new sponge. It's got all 5 corners, and you use it in the kitchen. Then when it gets kind of grimy, it's no longer a kitchen sponge, it becomes a floor sponge, and you cut another corner. And then when it's too grimy for the floor, you cut another corner. So anybody picking up the sponge will know, don't use this in the kitchen because this corner is cut off. I think we kind of do that with our facilities. Okay, no longer a primary instructional facility. We're going to make you a swing site. Okay, you're not a swing site. We're going to make you where we're renting for film industry or technology. And I don't think that's a bad approach. But I think in the stock of facilities that we have, there are some facilities that all 4 corners need to be cut off that sponge. And we should be transitioning. So I'm looking for that same.
Cut the sponge.
Cut the sponge.
Cut the sponge.
So that's kind of my thinking about it, how we're looking at how we're using these facilities and who we're putting in place. Because what are you saying to the staff that are walking into that particular facility, even if it is repurposed for something that we think it's adequate? And then I wasn't as bothered by the long bus rides that Mr. Brinkman mentioned. I mean, Dr. Brinkman mentioned, we both did that Georgetown to Gould to Beach bus ride. And it was true, coming from Gould, I'd get home 4:45. And I got all my homework done on the bus. Just in time.
That was the only benefit, is
Just
that you
in
had to get
time.
your work done on the bus.
Yeah, just in time to watch the Flintstones and the Brady Bunch. It was done. I think that shorter bus times is really good currency for us to sell, but people don't mind those long bus rides if they're getting a ride to their choice school. So it's not like the platinum standard, because people are willing to make that exchange for bus times if they're getting something else that is premium for them. So I appreciate that. I will appreciate seeing that, but it's not like the end-all be-all to me for some of these decisions. And then finally, for me, I want to make sure that staff are not left out of this conversation. If you are a staff member or particularly administrator, you're having a significant change in your career trajectory for reasons that have nothing to do with your performance. If you're at a school that's closing, you've got a significant change in what's happening for you. If you're a higher level administrator, if you're a department head, your trajectory is changing because of facilities, not because you weren't good at what you were doing. We need to be thoughtful about that and minimize the long-term impact on people's careers for these changes that have to do with how we spent money on a building. I think that's really important. And so those are all my comments. I don't have any questions. I hope to hear from the community on this. I think this is the rollout, and then we're supposed to get all the feedback. I haven't gotten any feedback yet, so I invite people to contact me and let me know what they think about this, and I look for more information as we get into the next phases.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grabowski.
All right. Also want to echo appreciation to the team and to Dr. Watts for your leadership, for really pulling this together in a very quick time frame. I appreciate that really drive to let's get this moving, because as Mr. Katchmar said, we've been talking about a lot of this for a long time, so it's exciting to see it all come together. I want to take just a quick second to talk, we're spending a lot of time, we spend a lot of money on our facilities, and I think everyone is aware, but I don't think it ever hurts to speak to the importance of high-quality facilities for educational outcomes. There are, countless studies and documentation about the importance of a high-quality learning environment. And that's really the reason that we're doing all of this work. So I think as long as we always keep that at the forefront of the motivation and the rationale of why we're doing what we're doing is for the benefit of our students and teacher and faculty is really important. I do like the shorter bus ride. My mom is a retired middle school teacher, and she had a lot of her students who came, who experienced long bus rides, and it was very challenging for her as a teacher when students came to school hungry, tired, not prepared to learn because they were exhausted first thing in the morning, and they got home too late at night to really have a good night's sleep. So I do think that being able to shorten those bus rides is beneficial. For a couple of questions, the issues at Largo Tibet that were described because of its location in the floodplain, are we going to remedy those situations prior to it becoming a swing site?
The intent is to mitigate as much as you can. There's a specific area on the site where it is in a floodplain, so it's a part of we'll be doing some upgrades as well.
Okay.
The newer building is not in the floodplain, so as we continue our work to transition Bartlett as the first site there, we'll be looking at how we'll manage that, with even to consider the possible for some mobile units there that will not be in that particular area. You're going to have labs there because they're middle school.
Right. Well, and to that point, STEM does have some very specialized needs because of their academic programming, which I know you'll take into account.
And we're
with the swing
recognizing
site.
that. That's why I
Yeah.
didn't say portables, I said
Right.
some modulars that will be able to come to accommodate the specific requirements for them, is what
Okay.
we're looking into.
Okay, good, thank you. This kind of goes a little bit to Mr. Catchmar's question of kind of the phase two. So with this plan, that will give us 3 swing sites. Is that correct?
For
We'll have-
1 year,
for one-
because one of those sites we have a vision for, and it will include removing at least one facility from our inventory, but all of that is an exploration phase.
Okay,
So
okay,
it could include 3, but I'm thinking more 2 when I think longer term.
longer term. Okay, that was kind of my, like, where do you see this kind of going from there?
Yes.
So that makes sense. Okay, great. One of the things that in our small group meeting that we talked a little bit about was, as we're looking at shifting these attendance zones, looking also at the walk shed for the students.
We did.
And also the neighborhood continuity. Great.
Yes.
I know that there is a tendency, and I understand the rationale behind splitting zones along a street, but to the extent we can not only look at, because sometimes what that does is inadvertently split a neighborhood. So sometimes it's actually better to draw that line on the backside of a parcel as opposed to on the front of the property line, so you can keep a neighborhood together. So I just want to put that because if we're talking about, neighborhood schools, keeping those neighborhood students together, I think is worth evaluating if that works. Let's see, I think there was, and then my final question or comment would be, as we move towards these public hearings that we're required to have, and obviously, we need to have, and this gets a little bit to Dr. Hoskins-Brown's point of, I know typically we hold our public hearings here, and I don't know if it's possible for us to hold those hearings actually in the communities where we are closing those schools to make them more accessible to those communities and also more accessible to the larger community.
Okay.
So perhaps it's at the city hall of that jurisdiction or something like that where we can increase accessibility to the community that will be most impacted by those closures.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. Mhm.
Thank you. So I'm just going to say that everything that all these board members that have said, I agree with. I want to piggyback on what Mr. Catchmar and I think Dr. Hoskins-Brown and Grabowski talked about. So the 3 schools, Schumann, Largo Tibet, the Montgomery site, I would like to see how much money we're going to spend on bringing those up to a point where we could actually have students in them. And if that amount is greater than what we would get if we sold those schools.
Okay.
Okay, it's, and I applaud the staff. I applaud you, Dr. Watts. I was at that meeting the other night. Guys, I got to tell you, Dr. Watts earned her money that night. I worked with children and I've worked with adults. Sometimes you love children. But yeah, we really need to look at costs because we're not going to have an East Plus anytime soon. And yes, we do have to look at what we're going to do in West Chatham, and any way if we can get money in, we need to look at. So, thank you very much. Any more questions? Anyone? Yes, Dr. Brinkman.
Just piggybacking on that, because I don't, not everybody is fully abreast on the Windsor Forest High School build. That was a 10% increase because we couldn't swing it.
Right.
So, I understand the cost savings on, and that 10% would pay for the Montgomery site repair and more. So just if those numbers are attached
we
to,
gotta
like
look at
you're
that.
already doing, those numbers are
Yeah.
attached, because it flabbergasted me and made me slightly upset that we didn't have a swing site to save that money, but building on site costs that much more this day and age, just to make sure that our students and the workers and our staff stay safe during construction.
Ms. Hall.
just want to say to Mrs. Kegler and her staff, we're kind of smart because of all the learning we've had from you over the years with this. We know how to look at a facilities condition assessment and all of that because of your hard work. So I just want you to know, I hope this is going to pay off for you now, that you have 9 people who are really ready to support and move ahead with this.
Anyone else? All right.
Thank you for
I
the
would like to
opportunity.
echo Ms. Connie Hall's sentiments. Thank you, Ms. Vanessa Kegler and your team. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. I will. I will. Don't do that before I speak. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.